Well, after months of lurking in the shadows, opposition leader Peter Dutton was finally forced to pin his colours to the mast when he delivered his budget reply speech last week. My next guest, Queensland law academic James Allan, is one of the nation's leading conservative critics of the Liberal Party, and he was both surprised and impressed by Dutton's speech. Here's a key quote from the speech regarding the crisis now being felt in Europe.
Their electricity and gas bills are spiralling out of control. Countries are rationing power. And not just because of the invasion of Ukraine, but because governments in several countries in recent years have made catastrophic energy decisions. They've turned off the secure supply of electricity and gas before the technology and system are ready for new renewable energy. Now, despite those warnings and lesson warnings, this Labor government is following in the footsteps of those countries.
So the Labor government is going to do to Australia what is already happening in Europe, which is what we've been saying for months here on ADH TV. Let's bring in James to see if Peter Dutton went far enough in that budget reply speech. James, welcome.
Hi, Fred. How are you?
Good. So what did you think? Did it go far enough, James?
I was pleasantly surprised to find out that Peter Dutton was in fact alive. So that was a nice, nice to see he's actually not. Look, my wife was very impressed. I was pretty impressed. For me, I'd like the Liberals just to come out and say net zero is not going to work. It's a terrible idea. The problem, I think, at core is that we've had, at least since Mr. Abbott was defenestrated, we had a Liberal government that was almost as keen on all this stuff as, there's massive subsidies to renewables hidden from the view, which is basically being picked up by the general taxpayer. And the whole system doesn't work without baseload power. The costs are skyrocketing. In Europe, you're at a stage now where in Germany, they're knocking down wind farms to reopen coal mines. I mean, it's really bleak over there. And we seem to be it's almost like a religion here. And many, many Liberals are as sort of caught up in the mania as the Labor here. I mean, at the state level, they're just hopeless, the Liberal parties around the country. So Peter Dutton might be as good as it gets, but why couldn't he just, if he wouldn't come out and say we're against net zero, we're against net zero, how about saying we are going to push forward on nuclear if you vote for us? And then, it's a little bit of humming and hawing. But within that context, look, we're going to be in for some big problems. Get your position out to the public as soon as possible. It's the same as the COVID. If the Liberals had to come out and said we're against this despotism, they would be walking it home in all the elections now.
Yeah, well, let's get to, sorry to interrupt. Let's get to COVID in a minute, because you wrote an excellent piece about that in the Spectator, which I want to look into at length later. But I noticed that even The Guardian couldn't spin this budget reply speech by Peter Dutton to make it sound like a denial of climate change, because essentially the effect on ordinary people is just impossible to deny. This must be, the government is admitting energy prices are going to rise. So even The Guardian has to get on board. This should make Dutton's job one of the easiest in the country right now, shouldn't it?
Come out. I mean, anyone who believed at the last election that your power bills were going to go down $275, frankly, really wasn't following what was happening around the world. There was no chance that was ever going to happen. And I think Labor was pretty cynical about it, because I don't think they could have believed it either.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're in
he
Go on.
Sorry, he has a lot to work with, Dutton, and he did a pretty good job, and he made himself seem sort of reasonable. But if your goal is to win over the Guardian, you're approaching the elections the wrong way. Who cares what the Guardian thinks of you? They don't like anybody who's, to the right of Paul Keating.